Connecting.
So I never noticed that before. It says live on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
See it.
Yeah.
okay. And you're live.
Good afternoon. You're listening to the new WCEG network on WCEG Radio, Talk Radio, WCEGTalkRadio.com. Go to the website, click the live stream tab on the website, or you can watch us on your smart TV on YouTube at WCEG Network. I am Vincent Cheeks, your host of Conversations in Education for the next hour. We are the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group, where we speak life into the community. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at WCEG underscore talk underscore radio and at WCEG Network. Last but not least, the topics and opinions are those of the show host and the guest and not of WCEG Network. Thank you for your continued support. Okay. Thank you for being here. We have a lot to talk about today. There's a lot going on in the world. And so we're going to get started. But before I do that, I would like to dedicate this show to my uncle, Buster Lee. He passed last week from COVID. They had his funeral this past Saturday. So I am going to dedicate this show to him. I want to send love to my cousins, April, Ina, and Carolyn. And the rest of my cousins in Albany, Georgia, that loved him so much. That was a big loss for the family. So my thoughts and prayers are with everyone. Okay, so with that, since we're on the topic of resting in peace, we lost two of our, I'm sorry, I'm going into the show and I have a whole guest sitting right here. I'm sorry. I heard the gun go off and I'm out the box. I'm out the box. I apologize. And I was thinking about my uncle, so I apologize. I have with me today a very special guest. He's a co-worker, he's a teammate, and he's pretty much family, WCEG family. I'd like to welcome Mr. Norman Carter. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Thank you for being here. Mr. Norman Carter is the host of Issues and Answers, and that airs when, Mr. Carter?
It airs on Monday, this coming Monday, in fact, at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
From 4 to 5, 4 to 6.
Okay, and what are we going to be discussing Monday on Issues and Answers?
Monday, we'll be discussing domestic violence and
okay.
The pandemic and its effects on everything from electioneering to lifestyles.
Okay.
And also we're going to have a little bit on law enforcement.
Okay. Sounds like it should be a great show. And you said Monday at 4 p.m.?
Monday at 4 p.m. right here
Issues
on the WCEG network.
Okay. WCEG network. I might have to try to tune in, and from that I'll be on the road driving back to Florida then. But if I remember, I'll put it on the phone and listen while I'm driving.
Thank you.
But yeah, so y'all make sure y'all tune in Monday at 4 p.m. Issues and Answers. But for right now, we are here, Conversations in Education, and guess what? I have some issues that I need answers to, Mr. Carter.
Okay.
So I'm sure you'll be able to help us out with
Let's have at it.
As I was saying, we lost two civil rights icons this past weekend on Friday. They both passed on Friday. Representative John Lewis here from Atlanta and C.T. Vivian also passed. Representative John Lewis, he passed from cancer that he'd been battling since December, I believe. And C.T. Vivian passed from natural causes, which is always a great way to transition and go home. So my first question to you, sir, is what are your thoughts on losing two iconic figures on the same day at the same time, roughly the same?
It's rough. There's such a vacuum now in leadership, but these two gentlemen represented the essence of nonviolent protests,
Yes.
and not just in the nonviolent protests, but their accomplishments. They both accomplished so much. Um, I think it's very difficult to even measure uh, their contributions to not just African American, the African American community, but the entire country.
Right.
So many people benefited from what these men sacrificed and what they did. And these people actually suffered physical injuries, serious physical injuries in pursuit of justice for all Americans.
Yes.
And it's such a difficult void to fill, difficult shoes to fill.
It is, and I agree. I really didn't know much about CT Vivian. I think I really just learned about him earlier this year, which is a tragedy because, we aren't talked about all of our leaders and all of our heroes. We aren't taught about them in school.
Correct.
And so I think I was researching something else and CT Vivian's name came up and I was like, well, who the heck is that? So I had to figure out who that was. It was earlier this year, Penny, when I did the show about the 3 young ladies that helped to integrate Georgia State University and a lot of the colleges and universities here in Georgia. So yeah, I had to look him up. So I'm going to read a little bit about both of these men and speak about some of their accomplishments, and then we'll continue with the conversation.
Please do.
John Robert Lewis was born February 21st, 1940, and he passed July 17th, 2020. He was an American politician and civil rights leader who served in the United States House of Representatives for Georgia's 5th Congressional District from 1987 until 2020. That's a very long run. I'm thoroughly impressed with that. Lewis served as the chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee from 1963 to 1966. Lewis was one of the Big Six leaders of groups who organized the 1963 March on Washington. He fulfilled many key roles in the civil rights movement and his actions to end legalized racial segregation in the United States. In 1965, Lewis led the Selma to Montgomery marches across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in an incident which became known as Bloody Sunday. Armed Alabama police attacked unarmed civil rights demonstrators, including Lewis and Hosea Williams. He was a leader of the Democratic Party in the U.S. House of Representatives, serving from 1991 as a chief deputy whip and from 2003 as a senior chief deputy whip. Lewis received many honorary degrees and awards, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom. He was 17 years old when he met Dr. King. He was 23 years old when he spoke at the March on Washington in 1963, and that's amazing to me also. I know what I was doing at 23 years old, and it was nowhere near on the level of trying to fight for racial inequality for an entire country. So that has me very impressed with him. And these are things, again, I did not know until I started doing this research. He was the last surviving speaker from the march. He led the march. I mentioned he led the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, which was named after a Klansman who became a U.S. senator. He had his head cracked open by a state trooper and nearly died in the attack known as Bloody Sunday. The march led directly to President Lyndon B. Johnson signing the 1965 Voting Rights Act. But of course, anything that we have done for us in our favor, there's always going to be people trying to undo it eventually. And so in 2013, the 1965 Voting Rights Act was watered down by a Supreme Court ruling.
Right.
And they basically took away the provision in the 1965 Voting Rights Act that said that states and local municipalities can't change voting regulations. And so when they took that out in 2013, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, a lot of these states started coming heavy with voter suppression, redistricting areas, and basically just cheating, really, if you will, and trying to stop Black people and minorities from voting. And so Lewis, who became known as the conscience of Congress, I love that title, led the passage of the 2019 Voting Rights Advancement Act in the House. It now sits buried on Mitch McConnell's desk, waiting to be moved forward. We'll get back to the Voting Rights Advancement Act in a little bit if we have time, because I didn't know about that until today. Did you know about that, Mr. Carter?
Well, one thing I didn't know about that. The one thing that I do know is that the what happened in 2013 is that what they did then was also took away federal oversight
Yes.
of problematic states like Georgia.
Yeah.
That was done away with. And that's why another reason why you see so much voter suppression going on, not just in Georgia, but all over the South and even
Yeah.
some places in the North.
Yeah, some places in the North too. And so that's, again, like I said, sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk, waiting to be pushed forward. And if I hold my breath waiting for that to happen, I'll turn into a Smurf. Okay, so we gonna see how that works out. But let me get back to Mr. Vivian. Cordy Tyndale Vivian, CT Vivian, was an American minister, author, and close friend and lieutenant of Martin Luther King Jr. during the Civil Rights Movement. Vivian resided in Atlanta, Georgia, and founded the CT Vivian Leadership Institute, Inc. He was a member of the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. Senator Barack Obama, speaking at Selma's Brown Chapel on the March 2007 anniversary of the 1975 Selma to Montgomery March, recognized Vivian in his opening remarks in the words of Martin Luther King as the greatest preacher to ever live. So CT Vivian participated in his first sit-in, his first lunch counter sit-in in Peoria, Illinois in 1947. It was the first of many. He was one of the original freedom riders of civil rights activists who rode buses through the South to push for enforcement of desegregation laws on buses in along the interstates. And like I said earlier, he and Representative John Lewis both received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. So that's just a little snippet of who these men were. I highly suggest if you're a young person to go Google these people, because Google is your friend. And if you're an older person, a parent, I encourage you to Google them and really find out who they were and teach them to your children, because these are civil rights leaders, civil rights icons. And like Mr. Carter said, they did a lot to advance racial inequality in this country. So I think it would be a good thing, for that to happen. So let me ask you this, Mr. Carter. Have you ever been to any of the Selma marches in Alabama?
I have not, although several years ago I had an opportunity on a bus tour to ride over the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
Okay.
But no, I have never been to one of those marches.
Well, let me just suggest
Okay.
that you get to one. I've been to the past two. The past 2 years that WCEG has gone.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone, and it's one thing to hear about these places and these things that happen, but once you go and you experience it and you feel, the very first time I went, I felt the presence of my ancestors, and it was very strong. I felt it this year when I went. I just think it's something that not only all Black people should definitely do, but all people. And that's one of the things I loved about going to the Selma marches. It's people from all over the country coming, Black, white, Spanish, Asian. Like it's really a very beautiful, diverse mixture of people coming together for a celebration of something that's great. And so I think that's a pilgrimage, if you will, that everyone should take and be a part of.
That has to be very, very emotional.
Yeah. I wasn't as emotional this year, when I went, but last year when I went, that first year,
Yeah.
yeah, because it was heavy. It was just heavy, just
Mhm.
knowing what happened, knowing the struggle of the movement in general, and then just knowing when you're crossing that bridge, when you're going over that bridge, and you're coming down. Both times I've gone, when I'm coming down the bridge, all I can hear is the voice of the state trooper, the lead state trooper that said, if y'all cross that bridge, when you get to the bottom, you might regret the fact that you crossed that bridge.
Right.
And so all of that washed over me the first time. And I'm even, as I'm going down the bridge, I'm even trying to picture in my head I'm trying to find the places in the pictures that I've seen of where these things happen, because I saw a picture of where Representative John Lewis got hit with the club in his head. And so when I go over the bridge, I'm trying to find this spot because I wanted to go to it and just be in that moment, but I didn't find the spot. And then we had to go because our buses were about to leave us. But I highly recommend it. So let me ask you this, Mr. Carter. When I was there was a lot of talk of the Edmund Pettus Bridge being renamed for Representative John Lewis. What do you think about that?
I've heard. I think it's a fantastic idea. I think it's a fantastic idea. You have to remember, and I sort of said this before, that the Voting Rights Act benefited minority people all over this country.
Yes.
All over this country. And it affected, excuse me, our government. It affected lifestyles. It access to voting changed so many things.
Yes.
Changed so many things. And for someone who gave up his body, who nearly died, and he's at the front of the pack. He was the first one hit.
He was
the first one hit.
Yes.
Probably the smallest person out there. Humbled.
Yeah.
Humbled. And I saw the club that he got hit with.
Wow.
I know how those feel. I'm a former police officer, if you didn't know.
Okay.
He got hit with basically a log. I mean,
wow.
That thing has no give in it at all.
Right.
And you figure a beefy cop swinging at you with full force, hitting you across your head. No.
Yeah.
It's horrendous. But I think that when you and I like the people to look at it this way. You have a bridge named after someone who tried to overthrow the government of the United States.
Yeah.
Not someone like Congressman Lewis, who tried to build alliances, who tried to make this country better. That's certified. There's no doubt about what he did. Never did an untoward thing in his life, at least that we know about. And here you have a bridge named after someone who not only hated Black people, but actually hated this country when you look at it that way. So
that's a very valid point.
The name needs to come down.
See, I didn't know he was a Confederate.
Yes.
Until you just mentioned that.
Yes. Yes.
Oh yeah, that's definitely all the more reason.
Yeah. I did a program on voting a few months ago, and part of my discussion dealt with him.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you said he was a Confederate member. He was a Klansman.
Yes.
He left. He went on to become U.S. Senator.
Yes.
He went on to become a U.S. Senator. So with that in mind, how often do you think that happened, that Klansmen became politicians or policemen or people in power? And do you think it's still prevalent today in our Congress?
Well, one of the longest serving senators was the Imperial Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan from Virginia, Senator Byrd. And he just died just a few years ago.
Okay.
So yes, they're in government. We had in my home city a police officer. This is recently, just last year,
Mm-hmm.
out on some sort of demonstration, and people happened to know that he had a Ku Klux Klan tattoo on his arm.
Wow.
Of course, they had to get rid of him, but prior to that happening, I think he had like 2 or 3 years on the department.
Mm.
So yeah, those type of people have infiltrated every facet of our lives.
Right.
And yes, they're in leadership positions even now. Some of them are more closeted than others,
Right.
but yes, they're in positions of power right now as we speak.
Okay. And so how do you feel, how do we as a community and as a people overcome the inequalities, the bias, and everything that's been done to us when there are people in positions of power who are leading this country that are in those places trying to do everything they can to hold us back and keep us in subservient positions? So how can we combat that?
Well, I think the first part of it is understanding the value of and participating in the voting process.
Yes.
That, and as I tried to stress to so many people, if votes didn't matter, people in power wouldn't be going so far out of their way to keep you from voting or to suppress your vote.
Right.
Votes count. Votes matter. That's how government changes. That's how things changes. We have to be educated voters so that we put courageous people in office, such as John Lewis, uh, who are willing to stand up and speak out and not just go along to get along, to become more or less what we call career politicians who
Right.
do nothing, who have no track record of doing anything for us that's substantive.
Right. Right.
So that's how we start the process. And the other part about it is we as a group, we can't be afraid to speak out.
Right.
Um, Using the media, using demonstrations, uh, however can to vent our frustrations, to let the public be aware of what's going on with us.
Right.
We have to stop being silent or tolerating. We African Americans have been known for generations to be among the most tolerant people on the earth. Uh,
Yeah.
it works to our disadvantage
Yes.
often.
Yes.
We are also the most forgiving people on the planet,
Yes.
evidenced by the late George Wallace. Um,
Mm.
that type of behavior, where he was able to garner significant enough forgiveness from the African American community
Yeah.
that he stayed in office, got out and came back in, and even ran for president of the United States.
I didn't know that. I didn't know he ran
Yeah,
for
he
president.
did run. There was an assassination attempt, and uh, that just stopped his chances in the election. That took him out. He was paralyzed. He was paralyzed for life after that.
Oh, I do remember hearing that towards the end of his life, he was in a wheelchair and that
Yes,
he was going on an apology tour to
right.
Black people and minorities. Because one of my
Yes.
friends, currently, she's an activist now, she said she was in fourth or fifth grade and went to somewhere to visit him. And,
Hmm.
he was apologizing and trying to, make things right for him before he transitioned. And she
Hmm.
was not feeling none of it, even as a
Yeah.
fifth grader.
Yeah, he was one of the people in the forefront of segregation, not just in Alabama, but also in the South. His remarks of segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever.
Forever.
I can never, ever forget. Those remarks and those actions damaged people's lives.
That's the only thing I know about him. Segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever.
Yeah, yeah, that was him.
Yeah.
That
Well,
was him.
so real quick, while we're still on him and how they say he changed his life, it might have been after the assassination attempt. He went on this apology tour, I guess, trying to make things right. Do you think people who have been racist their whole life have that ability to change and become a better person and try to right their wrongs from the past?
Well, going back to my religious beliefs, I believe that people can change.
Yeah.
People can change. The one thing that I always promote, especially when we're talking about people in law enforcement, is that I may not be able to change what's inside your mind, but I need to change your behavior
Okay.
when you're dealing with me or dealing with the public. That's my goal. Whatever goes on in your head, you can keep it there. But I'm more concerned about how you treat me, treat my kinsmen, treat my family. That's my concern.
Yeah.
So if his behavior changed, that's sufficient for me. And that should be sufficient for us.
Right.
I can't get into what's going on actually in his mind, but if his behavior changes, that's what we want.
Okay.
Yeah, I think changing one's mentality is a very steep mind decline.
Oh yeah. It's yeah.
That's a very steep climb.
Because
Uh,
yeah, you're trying to change something that's, they since they were the infant, has been instilled in them by their
mhm,
parents, the other people, their friends, relatives, their community. And so yeah, I think that is a task. Uh it's a task in and of itself, but I do believe that it is possible
mhm,
because I saw there was a black man, who would go around and talk to different Klansmen, trying to understand why they hate him and this, that, and the other, and giving them a chance, a platform to, I guess, uh, validate their hate of people.
mhm,
And there were a couple of them that he turned and became friends with. And for me to see that a few years back, because prior to seeing that show with him, I had never, and I can't remember his name, but I didn't think something like that was possible. But he was sitting at a table with a man who had been a Klansman for a very long time, and they were talking about how the conversation with this black man helped the Klansman change his ways. So yeah, I believe it's possible. I don't think I don't think enough of that goes on as far as and it probably for good reason, but as far as black people trying to go and talk to racist people or Klansmen or Nazis and get them to change their heart and change their mind,
right.
I don't think that goes on too much, and probably because it's dangerous.
Yes.
But I think if Oprah could create a platform with blacks on, and I don't want to say separated, but just have a platform with blacks and racists, and just try to have an open forum so blacks can try to possibly understand their hatred, and for the Klansmen or racists to hopefully see that black people aren't this image that they've had ingrained in their mind by this country. Um, I think something like that could possibly work, but I think the last time something like that was tried on the Phil Donahue show, back in
Yeah.
the late 80s, early
I
90s,
saw that
it turned
show.
into a brawl.
I saw that.
So you remember.
I saw that. Yes, I was going to
That's when
mention
Phil
that.
got hit in the nose. He
Yes.
got his nose broke with the chair.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
again, like I said, a dangerous endeavor,
Yeah.
if you will. But I think, for me, I think I wouldn't mind trying to take on an endeavor like that in a open, safe forum, if you will. I wouldn't mind going in there, explaining who I am, what I do in the community, and telling, just showing that myself, my community we're not these monsters and whatever else y'all have created us to be in their head. So I don't know. We might need to try to undertake that one day, Penny. But that's
Well,
the
you
deal.
know, it sort of brings to mind today that it came out that Congressman from, I want to say is Missouri. I might have the state wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but verbally attacked Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez on the steps of the White House, calling her a F and B.
Wow, I didn't hear about that.
Yes, that just happened today.
It happened
So
today?
that happened today.
Wow.
So
Okay.
when you talk about confronting this issue with the people who are the who don't have your interest at heart, who refuse to understand your concerns, and to come back at you, especially a woman. That seems to be the trend now, to go
Yeah.
after to go after women of color.
Yeah.
Uh, that's unsettling, very unsettling to me.
It is.
That happens, and it gets. I mean, somewhere there should be a black male congressman to go on and jump in this guy's face, and let them know that okay, we can have differences,
Right.
but you don't come at somebody that way. You wouldn't come after a Caucasian congresswoman or senator that way.
Right.
You wouldn't. So why would you do that to an African American congresswoman with whom you disagree
Right.
on certain policies? And that's all that is.
Isn't that a real lack of professionalism? I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
this is your job. I mean,
Yes.
what other job do you know where you can go on and you can call your counterpart in F and B,
Right.
like, and not have any repercussions or consequences? Like, where does that exist?
Yeah.
Congress.
Yeah. Again, somebody needs to, I won't say physically go after this guy, but there needs to be like a little ghetto type conversation with this gentleman to let him know that this is not the way you conduct business, and you're not going to conduct business with our women in this manner. We need to
Right.
be more protective of our women. Uh, Someone, a Cory Booker or somebody, needs to confront this guy.
You're absolutely right. So why do you think that's not happening? Before you answer, his name was Representative Yoho. But why do you think Ted Yoho? Why do you think
Okay.
no one is coming to her defense, or no black men are coming to her, or men of
Well,
color?
I think right now it's too early because it just happened. Uh, Probably late this morning or early this afternoon.
Okay.
But if nothing else, I mean, they do these come up and make these speeches before Congress. He needs to be called out publicly. Uh, Needs to be called out publicly. That's just not acceptable.
Right. Go ahead.
And it feeds right into what we're talking about. We're talking about having civil conversations about improving the lot of
Right.
our people,
Right.
and your comeback to that is to go in that direction.
Right.
That's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, you have a point. You have a point. I cannot. You have a point. All right, moving on. I'm gonna have to look into that a little later when we get off the show.
Okay.
Um, so back to Representative John Lewis and CT Vivian, and you said yourself there's a huge vacuum now that these two are gone. So my question to you is, do we have any current leaders that could fill, I don't want to say fill their shoes because they did so much, but do we have any current leaders that are of that ilk?
I think that somewhere there's a young leader waiting to step up. I think that a lot of what has to happen is there has to be some mentoring at some point.
Okay.
We have several people who now have a national voice, uh, small as it might be, uh, but there has to be some nurturing, there has to be some mentoring, and there has to be a greater focus. Focus is so important, and that includes not just knowing what the current issues are, but knowing, having a knowledge of your history,
Right.
of African Americans, a history of how this country has treated people in minority communities, and an understanding of how changes evolved over years and
Right.
what it took to make those changes. Uh, that requires a little bit of education. It
Yeah.
requires a lot of focus. And most of all, it requires a lot of fortitude. Uh, these people, C.T. Vivian, John Lewis, uh, Andrew Young,
Yeah.
these people had guts. I mean, to do
Yeah.
what they did,
Yeah.
do
In
what they
that
did,
time.
they had guts and enough guts to stand there and take physical abuse, always out there under the threat of being killed.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm not joking. You didn't know whether you were going to be killed by the police or people who were protected by the police.
Wow. Yeah.
Uh, you know, uh, classic example of that would be Ahmaud Arbery, uh,
Mm. Yeah.
who the murderer at one point was not just protected by the police, but protected by the district attorney and
Right.
everybody associated with law enforcement in that community.
Right.
So that's a huge issue. But they they came up under this daily threat. Let's not forget Medgar Evers,
Yes.
who was assassinated on his doorstep. Uh, that type of that these people lived under that. Martin Luther King, home was firebombed.
Yes.
Um, Malcolm X, same thing.
Yep.
These people lived under the daily threat of death,
Mm.
and we need to never forget that.
Yes.
To never forget that.
And not only lived under the daily threat of death, but some were killed. And
Yes.
for that reason alone, I feel is why minorities should vote. Because to be honest, I'm not I'm not a fan of this government, not a fan of this system. I I've always been one that has believed that my vote doesn't count, but I've always voted since I was 18 years old because of that fact that people died for me to have the right to vote.
Yes.
And if
Yes.
for no other reason,
Mm-hmm.
that's why I need to get out there in that ballot booth and pay respects to them, to those that paved the way before us,
Mm-hmm.
for us to have this privilege, this right, really. So yeah, let me ask you this. They said they found Representative John Lewis's replacement, and she's a young woman by the name of Nakima Williams.
Yes.
What do you know about her, and do you think she was the right person to fill those shoes?
I'm not sure. I remember hearing a few years ago when she was running for congressperson or senate that she was involved in some sort of scandal. I'm not completely. I'm a little cloudy on it, but I know there
Okay.
was something untoward in her background.
Okay.
Uh, I'm sort of uncomfortable with the fact that the replacement was selected so soon, so quickly. Uh, I'm sure there were people.
Well, I'm sorry. Wasn't that done so Kemp couldn't choose somebody to go in that spot?
Could have been, could have been. Could have been. And that would have been disastrous.
Yeah.
That would have been disastrous. And when you look at it, election comes up in what, 3 months, 4 months?
Yeah.
So
Well, I typed in trying to find what you were talking about as far as something going on with Miss Williams. The only thing that came up, I think Penny mentioned this to me yesterday, says Williams was one of 15 people arrested during a protest against the handling of the 2018 Georgia gubernatorial election at the Georgia State Capitol on November 13th, 2018. Right. The charges were dropped in June 2019. In January 2019, Williams was elected to lead the Georgia Democratic Party.
Yeah, that was it. That was it.
So if that's the controversy,
yeah,
okay,
that's
I'm all for it.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. No problem.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, we'll have again big shoes to fill.
Very.
It can never be about ego. It has to be about commitment to the people that you're supposedly serving.
Correct.
And having the fortitude to sometimes stand alone.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you, sir. I'm just trying to figure out in my head now how long it's gonna take before white men GOP members start attacking her and coming after her because she's taking that position.
They won't. They'll do it very subtly, and way the system works sometimes is the white politician or white person will find a black person to do that dirty work for them.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's the way it works.
Well, I wish her the best. I hope she does well. We'll see how it goes. But I do know that we did not need Cheating Kemp to appoint anyone to that position.
Well, Kemp now looks like a national idiot. I mean, this is the second time. This is the second time in less than 6 months. I think it's very suspicious that President Trump visits Atlanta, meets with Kemp, and soon as Trump leaves, there's a lawsuit by the governor against the mayor of Atlanta.
Right. And from what I understand, that lawsuit is because I started calling Keisha, but I'm gonna stay formal. Mayor Bottoms, as my inner hood wanted to call her Keisha. But Mayor Bottoms issued a mask mandate for the city of Atlanta because she saw the numbers rising and felt like nothing was being done about it. So she took her leadership role seriously and sent out this mandate. The next thing you know, Kemp is coming at her on Twitter, telling her that what she said is not enforceable, and what the whatever he issued about the mask is the only thing that's enforceable in the state of Georgia and the city of Atlanta. And so they were having a back and forth on Twitter, of all places.
Yeah.
Which I don't understand. So what do you think about that? What do you think about two leaders, a mayor and a governor, on social media having a public dispute about something that affects everyone?
Yeah. Well, both should be above Twitter.
Yes.
Really.
Yes, I agree.
You're a government leader. Don't take the Trump route to getting your point out. That's ridiculous, and that cannot be the norm. It cannot be the norm. He's trying to make it the norm, and his bootlickers are falling right into that.
Yeah.
And I mean, the governor of Florida is another one. Yeah, another one. I mean, they seem to have no brain of their own.
Right.
and
Correct.
what comes out of their mouth makes no sense at all.
You're right. And it's like what you mentioned earlier. These politicians are doing these things to lick Trump's boots, if you will, to maintain their political status and their status quo, which it's not supposed to be about that. You're not supposed to cater to um, a dictator. And that's how he's behaving. And I think you said Kemp has garnered the title of national idiot. I think it's a strong race between Kemp and DeSantis
Yes,
from Florida,
absolutely.
and it's a
Very
couple of
accurate.
the Texas governor, and it's another one on the West Coast. One of the Dakota governors. It's a woman.
Yes.
They just they're placing their political aspirations ahead of the well-being of the people. And when
Yes.
you're voted into office, isn't that your supposed to be your main goal is to cater to the people?
Yeah. I mean, you just had a governor yesterday who we're talking about COVID-19, who says, well, he wants children to go back to school. And if they get it, they'll go back home. They'll go home and get over it. Absolutely crazy thinking. These are not people who have the welfare of their constituency. You know, they're making political decisions, politically expedient decisions, but not decisions that are benefiting the health and welfare of the people they were elected to serve. You had on your, I think it was your last program, you had these young sisters
Yes.
on.
Yes.
And I'm listening to a lot of the confusion that they were speaking of was because of this nonsense by our leaders who are throwing so much junk at these young people. And it's junk. And the children realize it's junk. But if you're an adult throwing junk at me, how do I make a decision?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Who is
Yeah.
working for my benefit?
Right.
I have to go to school in the middle of a pandemic, and you're not going to make any special accommodations. You're just going to throw me out there. Uh, there has to be something better than that. One lady expressed concerns about uh, her grade suffering because of uh, the, she was having trouble absorbing things, uh,
Yep.
you know, digitally or over the
Yep.
computers.
Yep.
Those things have to be thought out and planned by so-called adult educators, so-called government leaders,
Right.
and that's not being done. And our children are being thrown to the wayside, thrown to the
Yeah.
wayside. So what happens now when these children become young adults? Adults now voting adults
Right.
trying to make it in this world. Our
Right.
future leaders, we're taking away what they should have to work with. It's just horrendous.
Right. And to your point about the children being, thrown to the wolves, if you will, being used as guinea pigs,
Mm-hmm.
Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis has said a couple of things, but one thing he said was if Home Depot can open, then the schools can open. The other thing he said was children can't get the virus.
Right.
So, but there's two documented instances I can think of where children have died. There was a 5-year-old that died in Detroit a couple of weeks ago. So how can you make this blanket statement saying that children aren't affected by this deadly disease when there is clearly things on record that show children have not only contracted this but have transitioned from it?
Yeah.
So I just think there has to be a wholesale agreement with these leaders, the mayors, the governors, the president, the city council people, they have to come up with a uniform way
Mhm.
for the country to do this. If it's going to be done, if we're going to start school back in the fall, there has to be a uniform way. You got different states. Two of the biggest counties in California, Los Angeles and San Diego, have already said they're not having in-person teaching.
Right.
There have been other states, but then you got the either the lieutenant governor of Texas or the governor of Texas that said our kids will be fine. They're, scientific data suggests that children can't get it, and if they do, they'll recover quickly. So throw them out there.
And you heard that in your last program where these children were saying, well, I thought that we couldn't get it, that they said that we couldn't get it.
Yeah.
Or they said that Black people can't get it. This type of nonsense
Yeah.
that comes out from the leaders, it comes out from the leaders. These are not rumors on the street.
Right. Yeah.
These are leaders putting these things out, this confusion. And what that does is when people don't know who to follow, they just go their own way.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. That's a problem.
You're absolutely correct. And y'all's president, 46 minus 1,
Mm-hmm.
to quote Pastor Penny, he has said that if schools won't do in-person learning, that he will cut federal funding. What do you think about that?
That is bullying, number one.
Yes.
Number two, it's almost like he's a dictator.
That's what he's trying to be.
Yeah, he's a dictator. I mean, that's as insane as I'm going to send federal police to your city if your city doesn't get its act together.
Yep.
And they're going to walk around with unidentified, throw people in unmarked vehicles.
Yep.
With no criminal charges.
Yep.
This is stuff like Hitler did in World War II.
You're right.
And you're going to do this to the American people. You're going to bully people. You're going to expose children who you're supposed to care about. You're supposed to care about your children.
Yeah.
And here you are saying, well, if they're not going to go to school full time, then we're going to pull the funding. That's insane.
And what is that going to do for education in America? What would that do?
Well, the first thing it's going to do is going to adversely affect minority communities more than it will impact anyone else.
Oh, most definitely.
I mean, the community that can least afford to miss educational opportunities.
Yes.
Can't go to private school is not an option.
Oh, no.
That's not an option. So the people who can least, who need the education the most, you're taking that away from them. You're taking that choice away from them. And then not only that, you're possibly condemning them to death.
Right. Exactly. You're absolutely correct. It's a very unnerving situation. Every time I think about it, it unnerves me because I know I used to be a teacher, taught first and second grade. If I was still a teacher, I would have been told them I'm not coming back. It wouldn't even have been a thought. Mm-hmm. Like, we need to get this online, but then even with doing it online, that creates another issue for children, minority children, because a lot of us don't have computers and the tools you need to do online schooling. So that's going to create a bigger educational gap. It's going to create a bigger wealth gap, and it's just going to be all bad for our children. And we have to find a safe way to get this done. And if we can't, then I don't know what the solution is, because the reason they're trying to get the schools to open like they are is because they want parents to go back to work and the economy to get back moving. That's what all this is about.
Right.
And so if they can't get it done safely, I don't know what that means for the country. I just don't.
Well, we're on the verge of having the economy shut down anyway. I mean, the way this COVID-19 is resurging, uh, and I think it's now 41 states are uh, are having their highest incidence of COVID-19
Yeah, it's a lot of them.
at the present time. Something's got to give.
Yeah.
And this going on national television, he's going to be on TV today and probably and say what he said months ago. We got to open the country. Got to open the country. Well, you opened the country and look what you did.
Yeah. Yeah. He seems to be blind to that fact.
Yeah. So how many people died or are going to die because this is what you thought was the best thing to do?
Right. Yeah. We're gonna have to see how it plays out. I'm a little nervous about how it's gonna play out. And one of the most disturbing things I've read about the schools possibly reopening for in-person, outside of the danger that is put to the children, is there are teachers now in mass doing their wills, buying more life insurance.
Yes.
Because they're preparing to possibly die on their job. That's crazy.
Yep.
How can you not pay attention to that and be sensitive to that? That's crazy. It's dictatorish.
Yeah. The same way you're not paying attention to doctors and nurses who are in these hospitals overwhelmed by this hoax called COVID-19. I don't get that. And for you to still be in support of this president who's selling death to America, I just don't understand it. I don't understand what's blocking their view. And these are millions of people.
Yeah.
Who just don't get it. But then on the other hand, I remember Hitler and Mussolini had millions of supporters.
Yeah. Yeah, they did.
Yeah, they had millions. But it's disheartening. Damage done. You can't undo the deaths. Some of these people who are sick and are recovering with life-altering injuries.
Yes.
That they may never recover from.
Correct. Lung damage, kidney damage, brain damage. Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
That right there should be you know what? I can't. Okay.
Yeah.
It's frustrating. And going back to what you said a minute ago about, bringing death to the schools, there's currently a lawsuit going on in Florida now against DeSantis, the Florida School Board, and some other people for signing this executive order to have schools be in person. And one of the teachers were protesting, and she was holding a sign that said, "I can't teach from the grave."
Yes, I saw.
How profound is that? Yes. I can't teach from the grave.
Yeah.
Like that can't be ignored. How are the teachers going to be? How are they going to be at their best to be able to provide maximum education for these children when they're scared of dying?
Yeah.
I don't see how that's possible. And even you got parents sending children to school with asthma, with other health conditions.
Right.
What is this going to look like?
That's a death sentence.
It is.
That's a death sentence. Yeah,
it's frustrating.
It's disheartening. Not that we have the leaders who are saying these things, but again, the millions of people who are supporting this.
Correct.
Who can't see it. I just heard a parent from Georgia today, up in Cobb County.
Mm-hmm.
Her concern is her and her husband working, and She didn't think it was a big thing to send her kids back in school with no social distancing.
Wow.
She didn't, and this was supposedly an educated woman. She sounded like an educated woman. How do
Right.
you, what's your thought process? You and your husband just have to find a way to make an accommodation. You
Yeah.
know, difficult, but which would you rather have? Would you rather have a dead child or a child that's going to suffer damaged lungs that'll be with them for the rest of their life? Maybe have damage to their heart, damage to their brain, because you thought it was more convenient for you to go to work and make these hundreds of thousands of dollars that you make
Yeah.
and sacrifice your children so that you can have a big house in Cobb County. I just don't get it.
Yeah.
Just don't
Right.
get it.
Well, we're gonna see how it plays out. I pray for the teachers and the students. I pray for everybody because this COVID thing is not, it's not going away anytime soon. And there's still people not taking it serious. There are young people throwing COVID parties, inviting people with COVID
Yeah.
to see how many people at the party will catch COVID.
Yeah.
What kind of ignorance is that? People don't want to wear masks. They're mad at Walmart and Lowe's and Home Depot for mandating wearing masks now.
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to get rid of this thing if people don't want to do the necessary things to get rid of it, slow it down, stop the curve, whatever it's called, flatten the curve?
That's simple. It's easy. It doesn't cost anything. Cover up.
Right. And
It's
if you're not doing
an-
it for yourself, do it for your fellow man.
it's nothing. It doesn't impose on your freedom at all. Not at all.
That's their argument.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it happens. I pray daily for all of this stuff. I know personally I'm tired of people I know dying from COVID.
Yeah, you had it in your family. I'm really sorry to hear that. That's sad.
Thank you. And I hate wearing this mask. I can't stand it. But I do it. I don't even do it for my protection. I do it because I know it makes other people around me comfortable. And that's it. And so
Right.
we have to find a way to get this right because you've been getting it wrong since it started.
Yeah.
Find a way to get this right and make this right without sacrificing more human lives.
Take the politics out of it.
Take the politics out of it. And we're gonna end it on that note. Because this is just it's just a lie. It's too much.
It's frustrating.
It is. It really is. To look at the leadership being so nonchalant and we just got to get the economy back going. Yeah. So
and I'm hearing today the president gets tested more than once a day. He gets COVID tested more than once a day. So he's hypocritical.
He's very.
You have millions of people who want tests who can't get it.
Right. So before I go, I want to touch on this other thing you said about what's going on in Portland. And if you all listening haven't heard about what's going on in Portland, Oregon, you need to Google it. Just type in Portland, Oregon, and it's going to come up. There are federal agents in Portland, Oregon that nobody knows are federal agents because they're in plain clothes, unmarked vehicles, maybe wearing masks, but they are driving around Portland snatching up protesters. They snatch them, they throw them in a van, put them in a blindfold, they drive them around for an hour, they might rough you up a little bit. They take you to a building, they make you sign a piece of paper signing your rights away, and then they take you and drop you back off in the street somewhere. That's dangerous for this country because Trump even said, not when it was happening in Portland, the Portland mayor or governor came out speaking out against it, saying he wants federal agents to leave. They said they ain't going away. Trump just said a couple of days ago that he wants to do this in other U.S. cities that are having these major protests, which will eventually become all U.S. cities. And you get snatched up for no reason. They've already been doing that in Chicago a couple of years ago. It was a federal agent snatching up Black residents in Chicago, throwing them in an unmarked van, and taking them to some facility to be questioned about whatever and taking their information and then just throwing them back on the streets. And people don't know where they are, what's happening to them or nothing. This is dangerous for this country. And it is paving the way for this country to become a dictatorship.
Yeah.
If we don't do something about it.
This is actually what you're seeing is martial law, which I mean is crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy because it ain't that bad. And Portland was one of these cities that were having peaceful demonstrations. I mean, yeah, the protests were longer, going on 50-something days.
Yeah.
But you weren't seeing the damage and the vandalism, nothing like that. But you're making a point for your political base.
Yeah.
And you're violating everybody's constitutional rights.
Right.
And you're putting federal troops doing stuff that they really shouldn't be doing.
Right. And that's dangerous because they could jump out of a van coming at somebody and you see them and you get to shooting because you just see strange men with no badge, mask on, coming at you. What else are you supposed to think? I'm finna defend myself.
Perfect example was Breonna Taylor
mm-hmm.
in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
No knock warrant.
Yep.
Breaking in the house, guy in the middle of the night, guy had no idea. He grabbed his gun and started shooting. The woman got killed.
Defending his house. Yeah.
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 That's the type of thing we're talking about. And guess what happens? If that happens, of course, the civilian is going to be the one who's at fault.
Right. Yeah.
They're going to twist that around. And if that can't be done, you've got an unmarked vehicle, people you can't identify. What's to say that they won't kill somebody, drop them off on the street and be done with it?
Yeah, that's going to be next.
Yeah.
That's definitely going to be next. I mean, because I read an article today that said if this continues, it's going to open the door for sex traffickers because they're going to feel like they can ride around in unmarked vans and people going to think it's federal agents and they just going to be snatching people.
Yeah.
Like this is a very dangerous precedent.
Yep.
Something has to be done about it. And he's talking about expanding it to other cities. Like this can't happen. It can't.
Well, now you're asking for people who you're appealing to a faction of people who would have no problem now. Okay, we're going to arm ourselves, and now you're going to have an actual war in the streets.
Yeah.
Some people want that.
Some people
want that.
Some black and white people want that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we pray that doesn't happen. It's a lot going on, man, and we just got to stay prayed up and just try to keep our friends and family as safe as possible.
I agree.
Okay, so with that, I'm gonna get ready to bring the show to a close. Thank you, Mr. Norman Carter, for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Again, he is the host of Issues and Answers. It will be airing this Monday at 4 p.m. on WCEG Network. Please tune in. And again, thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for being a leader in the community. And thank you for being part of the WCEG family.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Man, yeah, I'm worked up. Like my heart beating fast right now. Talking about that thing in Portland, they have my heart beating fast. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, before we sign off today, I'm doing something new today. I was gonna do my Scholar of the Week, but I'm doing something a little different today. I'm doing my Sub of the Week, not a good thing. And I'm doing this because last week or 2 weeks ago, I learned about this young man who had been killed August 24th, 2019 by the police. His name was Elijah McClain. Have you heard about his story?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm going to share his story right now. It really had a profound effect on me. I haven't, these killings happen often in this country. Been happening for a long time. Certain ones affect me more than others, and this was one of them. The other one that I could think of that affected me like this one did was Tamir Rice, the 12-year-old that got shot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Elijah McClain, he is my sub of the day. Sub stands for Slain Unarmed Black Person. August 24th, 2019, Elijah was walking home from the store after buying his brother an iced tea. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Iced tea, Skittles?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Trayvon Martin.
Yeah.
Trayvon
Trayvon
Martin.
Martin. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So he was walking home with the tea. A 911 caller and reported a suspicious person in a ski mask. When officers confronted McClain, who wasn't armed and had not committed any crimes, they said he resisted arrest. In the 15 minutes that followed, the officers tackled McClain to the ground, put him in a chokehold, put him in a carotid chokehold, called first responders who injected him with ketamine, which is something used to sedate people. He had a heart attack on the way to the hospital and died days later after he was declared brain dead. His body was covered in bruises from the attack by the police. Officers Nathan Woodyard, Jason Rosenblatt, and Randy Rodema were cleared of wrongdoing on the basis of questionable body cam footage in an allegedly inconclusive autopsy. So Elijah's sister said that he was wearing the face mask because he's anemic. You know, anemic with anemia you get cold. So he wore the face mask. It was an open face ski mask that he wore to help, with his anemia. His sister also said that he was an introvert and he was very shy and wasn't good with interactions with people. And so he felt like the mask was, he felt like the mask protected him from other people. So that's why he had the mask on. So on June 9th of this year, first of all, none of the officers were fired for this. One of the officers who was involved in his killing and two other officers who weren't involved in the killing, they were fired recently because they went to Elijah's memorial site and took a picture of them reenacting the chokehold on him, smiling and laughing. So they fired them for that. So these cops can get fired for taking a picture, an inappropriate picture, but they can't or won't get fired for inappropriately taking an innocent person's life, which is beyond me. So because of this carotid chokehold, and if you don't know what the carotid chokehold is, it's when you put your right arm or whatever your dominant arm is under the person's neck. And once you get it under his neck well or their neck well, you lock it on the other arm. And once it's locked, you're not getting out. You're just not. I don't care how big you are. I don't care how small you are. You're not getting out of it. And in a few seconds, you're going to be out. Mm-hmm. So they put this young man, and if you see the picture of Elijah McClain, he is not a big person. He's short. He's probably my size. He's got on glasses, wears a shirt buttoned all the way to the top. Like he looks like the most non-threatening victim I probably have seen outside of Tamir Rice. And so because of this, on June 9th of this year, this happened in Aurora, Colorado. The interim police chief, Vanessa Wilson, said officers would be banned from using the carotid chokehold anymore and be obligated to intervene when they see another officer using excessive force. Yeah, right. They will also have to declare their intention to shoot before firing their guns. Yeah, it looked good on paper, but we'll see how it actually plays out because I don't believe a word of that. And so this is the most heartbreaking thing about this story for me. And I feel like I'm getting choked up already. But because of the body cam footage that they did recover, it captured Elijah's final words. And these were his final words. He said, "I can't breathe. I have my ID." And mind you, he is minutes away from his house, okay? He said, "I can't breathe. I have my ID right here. My name is Elijah McClain. That's my house. I was just going home. I'm an introvert. I'm just different. That's all. I'm so sorry. I have no gun. I don't do that stuff. I don't do any fighting. Why are you attacking me? I don't even kill flies. I don't eat meat, but I don't judge people. I don't judge people who do eat meat. Forgive me. All I was trying to do was become better. I will do it. I will do anything. Sacrifice my identity. I'll do it. You all are phenomenal. You are beautiful and I love you. Try to forgive me. I'm a mood Gemini. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Ow, that really hurts. You are all very strong. Teamwork makes the dream work. Like he's cracking jokes while he's getting choked to death. And he's crying. Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to do that. I just can't breathe correctly. And he proceeds to throw up on the officer that's choking him and then passes out. And these were his final words. And last night I had opted to not talk about Elijah McClain because every time I read the story, it made me emotional. But today I was looking at the article that I had opened on him, and it has the picture that I'm telling you about of him. I don't know if you can see this picture, but he has the glasses on and his shirt button all the way up. And I'm looking at this picture, and I swear to God, I heard this young man's voice say, "Please tell my story." And so that's why I decided to do so. But yeah, I just wanted to share his story, and I'm just tired. I'm tired of reading these stories. I'm tired of people dying for no reason. And something has to be done about this to stop it. So that's it for me. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Mr. Carter, for being here. And we'll be back on next month. Thank you.